In this episode of PulsePoint, we'll update you on these topics. The New Zealand Minister of Finance hints at a review of the charitable tax exemption. The Italian minister pro-life stand at the recent G7 causes a stir. Cannabis-related hospitalisation among older adults surge following marijuana legalisation. The US Surgeon General calls for warning labels on social media for young people. And finally, the smallest surviving premature baby in the US, born 17 weeks early, is finally home. Welcome to PulsePoint, the latest media stories and research related to family and society that you need to know about. It's time to cut through the spin and uncover the real issues. I'm Tambi Stowers. According to a new report on interest.co.nz, a financial news site in New Zealand, the Minister of Finance, Nicola Willis, was quizzed on general tax policy last week, and in response to a question, she said this.
As we look to the future, we have said that we will put together a tax policy program that looks at other issues. In particular, I have previously identified that we have some concerns around whether all charities are effectively meeting the expectations that we have that, yes, they face concessionary tax rates when it comes to genuinely charitable activity, but we don't want to see that being exploited for activities which are more commercial in nature.
Interest.co.nz say, this is a clear shot across the bowl of charity sector. It's now apparent Inland Revenue will undertake an in-depth review of the sector. That's interest.co.nz's words, not ours. And this is not the first time this issue has been raised. As we have previously reported in the briefing to the incoming ministers for the community and voluntary sector from the Department for Internal Affairs, after last year's election and a change of government, it says this. Issues that stakeholders want reviewed include fundamental matters such as charitable purpose. For example, should the advancement of religion still be a charitable purpose with associated tax benefits, and advocacy by charities? In April, the Prime Minister was asked about taxing churches, and this is what he said.
Prime Minister, do you think churches should have to pay tax and rates?
Look, I'm actually quite open to that consideration of actually thinking through the broader dimension of our charitable taxation regimes and making sure that that's relevant. But for right here, right now, not a focus for us.
And then on the AM show, the Finance Minister, Nicola Willis, was asked about the same issue, and this is what she said.
Do you think churches should be tax exempt?
Well, this is an issue that we have discussed briefly. It doesn't form part of the government's policy platform, but what we want to see is everyone paying their fair share of tax, and we're conscious that for some time there have been questions about those churches that have a business arm where the business is a pretty profitable entity and they're paying a different rate of tax than other businesses because of their church status. It's not been something that we've prioritised immediately on coming into government. We've been focused on putting together a program of personal income tax reduction, but it is an issue that we've said that we'll look at this term.
Some commentators say that this will simply catch charities that have a significant business arm, and most people quote, for example, sanitarium. But there are two problems with that argument. Firstly, there are very few charities who have a significant business arm, so this is not going to find the level of income that the Minister of Finance is wanting to find. And secondly, these so-called charity businesses give all profits back to charity. There is no shareholder gain or private profit being made. It appears that charities, and especially churches, are directly in the line of fire. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni hosted the G7 summit, where a controversy arose over the removal of abortion-related language from the G7's final declaration. Last year's G7 declaration from Hiroshima included commitments to safe and legal abortion access, but this year's declaration excluded such references, focusing instead on general health services for women. Maloney received criticism from pro-abortion leaders like President Joe Biden and France's President Emmanuel Macron. Macron criticized Italy's stance, emphasizing France's commitment to gender equality. Maloney stated the alleged controversy was contrived and not a point of debate during the summit. Pro-life Americans, including former Vice President Mike Pence, praised Maloney for her stand, commending her for defending pro-life values. Recent research published in JAMA Internal Medicine found a significant increase in cannabis-related hospitalisation among older adults in Ontario, Canada, following the legalisation of cannabis. The study observed a rise in emergency room visits for cannabis poisoning among individuals aged 65 and older from 2018 to 2022, compared to the period before legalisation. Emergency room visits doubled after cannabis flower was legalized and tripled after edibles became legal. One associate professor of emergency medicine at Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School, Diane Salillo, noted, "It has been repeatedly shown that in states where legalization is enacted, there is an increase in adult cannabis use and visits for cannabis poisoning to emergency departments." Similar trends are observed in the US, particularly in states where cannabis has been legalized. Now, New Zealand should take heed of these consequences when drug advocates argue for liberalizing drug laws. The US Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek H. Murthy, is advocating for warning labels on social media platforms, similar to those on tobacco products, to address the mental health crisis among young people. Teenagers who spend more than 3 hours daily on social media are at double the risk of mental health issues, with the average usage being about 4.8 hours per day. Dr. Murthy emphasizes the urgent need for action due to the significant rise in teenage depression and anxiety, particularly among girls, as social media has exploded over the last decade. Here is Dr. Murthy giving advice to parents.
But here's the other thing I'd say for parents. If you're interested in your kid waiting to be older until they use social media, I recognize that's not always easy, because if they're the only one who's not on social media and all of their friends are, that can be really difficult, right? It can make them feel like they're left out, they're not part of the conversations that everyone else is part of, which is why these kind of movements that I'm starting to see among parent groups to make a pact with one another, that among a group of parents, that they're going to make sure that none of their kids actually use social media until an older age, maybe that's 15, maybe it's 16, maybe it's 17. These pacts are actually much more effective than an individual parent trying to make the decision, because then at least your child looks around and they have peers who are similarly not using social media at that age. So bottom line is, I certainly would be in favor of our kids waiting longer until they use social media.
Dr. Murthy calls for legislative changes, including phone-free school zones, creating phone-free environments at home, and delaying social media use until the age of 13. Jonathan Haidt, in his work, The Anxious Generation, also underscores the need to address the adverse effects of social media on young people's mental health. An interview with Jonathan Haidt will be featured at the upcoming forum on the topic of youth mental health, smartphones, and social media. And finally, a positive story. Baby Evelyn Eilers, born in September 2023, holds the distinction of being the smallest surviving premature baby in the United States, weighing only 8.46 ounces at birth, less than a can of Coke. Born at just 23 weeks via emergency C-section, Evelyn immediately began her fight for survival in the neonatal intensive care unit. Despite numerous complications, including lung collapse and infections, Evelyn persevered with the help of innovative medical treatments developed by the University of Iowa's medical team. After a tough 7-month stay in intensive care, Evelyn finally went home earlier this month, weighing a healthy 7 pounds 8 ounces. Evelyn's story underscores the incredible strength of premature babies and serves as a testament to the power of love, community support, and medical expertise in nurturing life against all odds. It also reminds us of the humanity of the child, even when in the womb. And that's the latest episode of PulsePoint. You can check out all these stories and more on our website, familyfirst.nz. We'll keep watching the news so that you don't have to. We'll see you next time.